Dark times, friends. These are dark times for U.S. men's national team fans, and we've got a funky backtrack to go with it for whatever reason. I don't have my normal setup, so I don't have my normal song, so we got a different song. It's a little bit funky. It doesn't really match the mood, but it's what we got. Only, I think, 7 weeks away at this point from the World Cup. The U.S. men's national team has a lot of issues, a lot of player issues. We were really hoping that whenever the teams return to their clubs, we would see kind of a different side of the players. We would see the players bounce back. So far, it is not so good. I think in the first Champions League game since he's returned, Christian Pulisic under his new coach, Graham Potter, did not get any minutes at all coming off the bench. Really disappointing considering Christian Pulisic, with the little minutes that he had in the weekend game for Chelsea against Crystal Palace, came up with that assist. A lot of folks, including myself, hoping that Christian could ride that momentum from that assist into turning it into something, getting more minutes under Graham Potter. So far, it does not look like that was the case. Over in Juventus's game, I mean, Weston McKennie is still kind of returning to form, I guess. And it was kind of a meh game I put out there on Twitter. How do you guys feel about Weston McKennie's game? And people were like, it was okay. It was not that great. He had some turnovers. Yeah. Kind of where we're at with Weston McKennie right now. And the weird thing is, like, after the 70th minute, he just looked so labored out there. He just looked like he was breaking down, and that's not normal. I mean, normally you see Weston McKennie can just run forever, and that's just not the case right now. Meanwhile, Sergino Dest went up against Chelsea. Sergino Dest got the start in the place of the injured Calabria, the starting right back and captain for AC Milan. And we got pretty much the same thing we've been getting from Sergino Dest for a long time now. He looked good in combination. He looked good in the attack. He looked good when the ball was at his feet, but defending, not so much, not quite up to the caliber. In other news in American soccer, I mean, the Yates report came out and it's just really rocked the U.S. women's soccer game in the United States completely. I mean, corruption from top to bottom, systemic issues within that. I mean, players being groomed, just like systemic abuse, systemic sexual abuse, just really terrible, terrible news coming from there. And I think all this, the friendlies, the results of the Champions League, the form of the players, the Yates report, all that is leading to a U.S. men's national team fan base that is just kind of out of it right now, kind of not excited about the team, not excited about the direction of anything. And 7 weeks out from a World Cup, whereas 2 years ago we couldn't wait for this date for the World Cup to come. It feels like at this point, not exactly greener pastures are ahead. All that more on this exciting episode of the Yank Report, and we are live, so we're going to get some live comments in as well. We'll see what people have to say in the comment section. I think we got to start with Christian Pulisic over at Chelsea. I put out a tweet right after the game. Christian Pulisic, new manager, first Champions League game under Graham Potter, no minutes. And that tweet has kind of blown up a bit. I mean, there's a ton of comments on there right now about people kind of accepting, I think, this idea that we didn't want to accept at the beginning of the season, this idea that we really haven't wanted to accept about Christian Pulisic in a while, and that's that he's just not in the plans for Chelsea and is deemed by the second manager in the row that he's spare parts at that club, and he's probably not going to get a run out, and it's looking like he's going to have to leave Chelsea, and he's probably not going to go to a club of equal caliber. He's probably going to be taking a step down, which is incredibly disappointing considered how he started his time at Chelsea, where we hoped he would be at this point, but it does not look like the case. Marshall H says Dest was horrifying, match rating 4.5, Pulisic shut out of the squad. Yeah, I mean, the hope was that when Graham Potter came in, that there would be a new system. Maybe we'd see more attackers. Maybe we'd see a fresh start for Pulisic. He got the international break as well. He got the break because of the death of the Queen. So a lot of opportunity for Graham Potter to come in and reevaluate the squad and kind of shake things up. And so far under Graham Potter, we haven't seen a lot of shakeup. I mean, we did see that change in formation in the game against Crystal Palace, where we got to see Christian Pulisic get that assist and come in, but we forget that was, I mean, his sub was very late in the game. He didn't have a lot of time to work with, and considering the amount of time he had to work with and what he actually did, you would think that leads to more time. Now, it's only a few games in the Graham Potter era. We could still see Christian Pulisic factor in. A lot of folks feel like he's going to get his opportunity at the weekend, considering he didn't play, and a lot of those players played significant minutes. Sterling and Havertz. No, Havertz didn't start. Sterling and Mount and Oba. So potentially that means some shift. Maybe he gets a change, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, man. I wouldn't be surprised if Potter rolls out a similar system and Pulisic is just on the outside looking in. This is the second manager in a row that's just not backed him over there, at least to start. And considering what we saw from Christian Pulisic in their international break with the U.S. men's national team, and considering how Christian has looked over the last few months with Chelsea in like the little bits and pieces, the little moments that we actually have seen of him, I haven't seen a lot that's going to make him displace Mount or make him displace Sterling or any of those guys on that front line. I know a lot of folks have been down on Mason Mount this year because Mason Mount hasn't registered any goals or assists, but I think it's pretty clear, especially if you watch that game today, that he's a player that managers believe in a lot because of what he does off the ball, because of the pressure that he brings, and also, I mean, he's a pretty solid player, and he just brings it every game. Whereas Pulisic is known to be a bit inconsistent. Elias Abiz says, I think it's time for Pulisic to get a new club, maybe take a step back to take 2 steps forward. And yeah, I mean, that's where we're at right now. Like, I totally agree. The unfortunate thing is the World Cup is in 7 weeks. And if the U.S. is going to have a shot in the World Cup, we need a Christian Pulisic firing on all cylinders. Whenever I say if the U.S. is going to have a shot, I mean, if the U.S. is going to be the best of their ability, if they're going to be able to get out of this group and then have an opportunity moving forward, we need the best Christian Pulisic we can get. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to have that Christian Pulisic right now, and that is incredibly disappointing. Man, let's see. Jackson Cook says, unfortunately, none of this matters. If Berhalter was managing Brazil, they wouldn't make it out of the groups. I don't think that's true, man. I think that significant amount. I'm getting a call, so let's see what this caller has to say. Hey, caller, you were on the Yank Report. Tell me where you're calling from and what's your name.
I've been a member with you for a while.
What's your name? I'm sorry, I missed
Carolina.
it. Say it again.
Bert.
Bert, what's going on, man? What's your screen name? Bert? Hello? Bert, I think we lost you. Where you at, Bert?
Hello?
Hey, what's up? What you got, Bert?
Not much. Just calling in. Talk on your show.
So did you get a chance to watch either of the games today, or have you heard about some of the fallout from those games? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did. I mean, for me, honestly, Pulisic, it's time for him to move on.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's time for him to move, but he can't move. There's no chance for him to move before the World Cup. So what are your thoughts on what this team is actually going to look like whenever we get to Qatar, considering kind of the state that some of our players are in, considering who our coach is, considering just everything that we saw in September?
The person I'm most worried about is actually Weston McKennie.
Mm-hmm.
He was like non-existent in the 2 friendlies that we played.
Yeah,
he was just nowhere to be seen.
Weston McKennie played one of the worst games I've ever seen him play, period, in that game against Japan. I know after the game, a lot of other players got a lot of hate, but I think, gosh, Weston McKennie was just bad. And if you consider whenever the U.S. has looked its best throughout World Cup qualifying, like I'm thinking about that game against Mexico and like the game against, I think, Costa Rica, Weston McKennie dominated those games. I mean, he was absolutely phenomenal for us. And there was a time before his injury where he was looking like one of the better players on Juventus. And at this point, It's not quite there. I think it's getting better in the last two games. In the Serie A game against Bologna, I thought he had a better game. And then today against, I forgot, I can't recall the name of that club. It's got a strange name that Juventus played today. He was better, but I think a lot of that has to do with the quality of the teams that he's playing. I think we're going to learn a lot this weekend, this Saturday against Milan. But I agree with you. I think I'm worried about Weston McKennie. He looked a little tired at the end of that game, which is not something we normally see from Weston McKennie. I'm worried about Christian Pulisic. I'm worried about all these guys.
For me, like, the heart of our team is the midfield. And I think there needs to be a balance there. For me, Tyler Adams is 100% the starter, the captain, everything. He needs to play that. But my issue is, yeah, Musa was hurt and everything. But one of those other two dual eights, or box about eights, or you can call 110 or whatever, has to be able to pick up the ball and run at players, or be able to actually handle the ball, take pressure off of people. And that's not Weston McKennie. And no offense to Luca De La Torre, but that's not him either. And
yeah.
No offense to, obviously, Cal Acosta. That's not him either. So we did not have any type of creative midfield player to pair with them and everything.
Yeah, and I don't think we have a creative midfield player. Like, even you're talking about Yunus Musa, and he can definitely pull off those direct runs. But as far as like creativity, it's not really something we've associated with him so far. I don't. Yeah, I would agree with you that we don't have that.
But at least he goes forward with the ball, and he has the ability to take on players, which actually causes other players to collapse on him, opening space. Problem is, we play with 2 8s and a 6. Where none of them have that ability, and then that affects everything from the wings to where the striker plays, because they're just backing off and saying, hey, we don't really trust that you're going to do anything from distance. So until Musa, again, he's hurt right now, but when he was starting to do things in the final third, like the Musa that like we're all hoping he can be, that looks awesome. And then Gio Reyna, if he stays healthy, but I mean, Brennan Aronson is not the greatest in the middle, though I think he would be a better solution to pair with Adams, and then whoever needs to play the 8 needs to be there also.
Yeah, I mean, I'll disagree with a few of the things you said. I think I do think Weston McKennie can do that job, and I do think De La Torre can do that job as well, as far as getting the ball from defense to attack and running upfield. The issue is the form that they're in right now. Can they do it right now? I mean, De La Torre hasn't played much at all since arriving at Celta Vigo, and he did not look good. He had one of the worst games of his U.S. men's national team career against Japan, and just looked completely off the pace. And then Weston McKennie, I mean, we've seen Weston McKennie be a game buster. We've seen him do all kinds of incredible things, but he's still returning to form. And I know we got Blake Foster in here saying that he made a lot of runs and he was all over the place. He was, and I'll give you that. I think he is getting better than where he was prior to the international window. But we do have to consider that the quality of the teams that he's playing and what's being asked of him right now at his club, and he's still not at the level that he was pre-injury. Bert, I'm gonna have to let you go, man. Do you have anything else for us?
No, that's about it.
Hey, I appreciate you calling in, man. Thank you.
No problem, man. Thanks.
There goes Bert. Yeah, let's see. I want to address Blake Foster here. He says, I've been a McKennie fan for a while and have been disgusted with the effort since he's returned from injury. Started to see it a little in the last Juve game. Today, I felt like he was nearly back to normal. Yeah, he did look better. He is looking better. And I thought today there were some passing sequences that started to look like the old West. Like he was really slipping in some balls and doing some nice things. What we're missing right now from West is that physical dominance. That way he would just take over a midfield, the way he would win every ball in the air, the way he would be, the way he would contest just everything in the midfield. And I don't think that we're quite getting it from him yet. I don't think that he's quite up to that level of fitness yet. And I think that's the real disappointing thing right now. So, I mean, the state of things as we look at them right now, I mean, we've got Christian Pulisic, who's just not even getting minutes. I mean, under the last 2 games, he's got like less than 10 minutes. He did end up with that assist, but not quite. Not quite what we want Christian Pulisic to be right now. Weston McKennie is still returning from injury. I agree with Blake Foster here. I do have hope. I do think in 7 weeks we're going to get a much better Weston McKennie than we saw in September. I do think that that's not far away. I do have hope that that's going to happen. But as far as Christian Pulisic, as far as Sergino Dest, I don't have a lot of hope that they're going to be much different players in 7 weeks than they are right now. It's just not looking good. Taylor Elliott says, what's your opinion on a majority of our young players making too big of a move transfer-wise, as opposed to making smaller moves to prosper like Adams and Aronson? Taylor, I think that we had just a crazy streak for a little while there where a lot of our players made transfers and then hit in a short period of time. And I think that is highly unusual. I think the majority of the time you're going to get some players that hit, but the majority of them miss. And I think we went through this period where, Christian Pulisic goes over and he hits and Weston McKennie hits. We got another phone call. Let me pause and we get to this. Caller, you on the Yank Report. Tell me your name and tell me where you're calling from. I'm sorry, I missed that. Tell me. Oh, he hung up. Yeah, so I think we had a lot of players that hit just right off the bat, which is highly unusual, and that's not what should be the expectation. So Christian Pulisic went over and he hit. Tim Weah hits. Weston McKennie hits. Tyler Adams hits. So that became the expectation that everybody was just going to go over there and hit right away. But that's not the reality. That's not the reality for the U.S. It's not the reality for Brazil or Argentina or any of these other nations that send a lot of players over to Europe. So I think what we're seeing right now is kind of a regression to the mean of what development actually looks like, which is inconsistent. It's not linear. Players fail. And it's just going to be all over the place. And I think that what we need to be doing, the reason why clubs like Brazil and Argentina and France and Spain are so successful is not because they're sending young players to these top clubs at young ages. It's because they're sending a lot of young players to these top clubs at young ages. So the more players that you send over, the more that you're exporting, the more that you're going to hit. I mean, there's tons of stories of young wonderkins that have come out of Germany or come out of Brazil or come out of Argentina that have made a move over and have just flopped, that haven't worked out. There's Freddie Adu's from every country. The thing is, you just got to keep producing this talent, and eventually some of them are going to hit. So I don't think it's a matter so much of where these players are going. I think we've seen players succeed going to every single thought of club that you can possibly go to, whether it's the stepping stone method or going to the big club method or going to the big club and getting loaned out and then getting loaned back. We've seen players succeed in all these different avenues. It's just a matter of having so many players over there that eventually the numbers are going to level off. Let's see. Jackson Cook says Dest is meant to play in a back three, and that's why he's exposed for the U.S. I mean, yeah, that's part of it. I think if you minimize his defensive deficiencies and maximize his attack, then you get a better player for Sergino Dest. But we've seen in other circumstances where he's played in a back three like he did today and still wasn't that great. Let's see here. Caller, you're on the Yank Report. Tell us where you're calling from and what's your name. Or just hang up immediately. Let's see. We got a few more comments here. Grim Affiliation says Pulisic isn't going to start over Sterling and Mount. He should just take the Milan deal and link up with Dest. I mean, that would be great, man. It'd be great revisionist history there, but it sounded like Chelsea was not letting him out of the club. So not a lot he can do. I mean, ultimately, it's got to be a two-way street there. And it sounded like Todd Bowley didn't want to let him out. So he had to stay. And I think that led to a lot of the frustration that you saw him exhibit on the field, and a lot of the frustration that you're seeing him with the national team sitting on the bench. I think he's in a rough place right now, career-wise, mentally, and I think we're seeing that manifest, and that's a shame because we really wanted to see the best Christian Pulisic we could see. We really wanted to see a coming out party for Christian Pulisic at the World Cup, but I'm worried that we're not going to get that. I mean, I'll say this too. The World Cup is a magical thing. I mean, so many incredible things have happened in the World Cup where teams were down. They came into the World Cup and they overperformed. We've seen teams that were high coming into the World Cup and underperformed. I mean, stars are made at the World Cup. It's just a magical tournament. So there's still a lot of opportunity for magic to happen. Magic certainly happened for the U.S. men's national team many times at the World Cup, but as of right now, things are not looking great. Burnman23 says Dest struggled today. Too much fitting of narrative. Berhalter's tanking all these amazing players for their clubs. Too much fitting of narrative. Yeah, I think what he's saying is that we're blaming Berhalter for the club form for a lot of these players, or blaming Berhalter for the underperformance of some of these players with the national team. When in reality, a lot of these players are just underperforming in general, or maybe not underperforming, maybe performing up to their level, but not performing up to the level that we set for them, which is true too. I mean, if you think about 2 years ago, what we were thinking about all these players, if you look back at some of my old videos that were like the top 10 players for the U.S. men's national team, I mean, we really had high expectations for these guys, and some of them have hit them for moments in time. Like Christian Pulisic has been unbelievable for moments in time. Weston McKennie has been unbelievable for moments in time. There was a time where Tyler Adams was one of the best young defensive midfielders in the Bundesliga. But as far as consistently and especially at this moment of time, a lot of these players are just not playing where we thought that they would be. And it's really disappointing. Let's see if the phone actually works this time. Hey, caller.
Hello.
Hey, you're on Yank Report, man. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Justin. I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Justin, what you got for us, man?
I wanted to continue how you were talking about how a lot of these players are really out of form at the moment. I think in one of your old videos you talked about how maybe we've been overrating these players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just talking about that.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. We've really been overrating these players. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I just really think we've been overrating these players as a lot recently.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think we're aware of it, but we don't want, like, we deny it as well. Like it's funny because I think that there's moments where we can address it and talk about it and be open about it and accept it. And then there's other moments where we still say like, this is the most talented national team that we've ever had. Like, do you still feel that way? Do you still feel like this is and guys in the comment section, let me know as well. Do you still feel like this is heading into this World Cup, that this is the most talented U.S. men's national team that we've ever had?
I think individually we are, like, man for man, but after looking at the games against Japan and Saudi Arabia and some of World Cup qualifying, maybe not as a team.
Yeah, I know from the start of this cycle, one thing that we did as a fan base is we really downplayed the need for like the middle of the road role player who's like in the prime of his career that maybe isn't great but is good depth. We really underplayed the value of experience and leadership, and we underplayed those things because we just didn't have them. And I think we did that collectively as a fan base. I remember reading the thoughts of like the Mexican national team and their fans and how they were viewing their team, and they were undervaluing youth and undervaluing like quality of where the players were playing and quality of league because they didn't have that. I remember reading a lot of comments from the Mexican fans saying like, yeah, the U.S. have all these players playing it for all these top clubs, but they don't have experience, they don't have leadership, and they're going to fold whenever the moments get tough. And I think we're seeing both nations right now struggling And both nations not happy with where they're at because they're both incomplete teams. Whereas the Mexican national team doesn't have that young talent, and they're seeing a lot of their top players age out of where they were, and they don't have that wave of talent to replace those top players that they had that just aren't quite what they used to be. For the U.S. men's national team, we've really undervalued just having a savvy veteran guy who's going to go out there and give you that same 90 minutes game in, game out, that may not be able to put together the highlights of someone like Christian Pulisic or Sergino Dest or somebody like that, but it's just going to give you that solid, dogged effort. And we're really missing that in this team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really where we're seeing the weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both teams are in completely different, completely opposite situations. As like you said, Mexico really focusing not focusing on the youth, while the U.S. maybe focusing a little bit too much on it.
Well, it's not so much that we're focusing. I mean, it's what we got. So we're supporting our teams, man. We're supporting our teams. We're supporting what we have. So I understand why we've undervalued experience and why we've undervalued leadership. I'm sure 8 years from now, whenever a lot of these guys are towards the end of their careers, and we've got 32-year-old Christian Pulisic and 32-year-old Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, we're going to come around full circle. And we're going to be like, yeah, we got all this leadership. We've got these guys that have been through wars. We've got this great team with leadership and experience and whatever. We'll come full circle on that. But as of right now, I think we kind of undervalued it. And I think it kind of reared its ugly head. But once again, we're not out of it yet. We still got 7 weeks and a lot can change in that time. So it's not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, disappointing, man. You got anything else for us?
I wanted to ask you one thing.
Yeah, what you got?
If you think if Potter keeps treating Pulisic this way, is there any chance that he doesn't start against Iran? Not Iran, Wales for the first game of the World Cup?
It's an interesting question, man. But I think at this point, considering the performances that we saw from some of the other players, so who would we start instead of Christian Pulisic? Would it be Brendan Aronson? Well, he didn't look that great in the September friendlies either. Would it be Gio Reyna? Well, he's injured, and we don't know what exactly is going to be of him come the World Cup. Tim Weah is returning from injury. I mean, if we had options, if we had guys banging down the door to take Christian Pulisic's spot, it would definitely be a possibility. But considering where we're at right now, I mean, we got to run with what we got. And what we got is a national team that doesn't have a tremendous amount of games together compared to a lot of these other teams that they're playing. I mean, we're going to be going up against an Iran team that's been playing together for years and is very cohesive and understands each other, whereas we have 2 years or a year collectively playing games together, only 16 games together. So we kind of got to ride with the experience that we got. But that's kind of where I'm at on Pulisic. That's where I'm at on a lot of these guys. I mean, we're gonna have to what is it, ride in on the horse that brung you or whatever. So it's gonna be Pulisic, and we're gonna have to live with what we get, and we're just gonna hope that he does something magical.
Yeah, understandable.
All right, man. I appreciate you for calling in.
All right, thank you.
Getting some good calls tonight. Let's see. Blake Foster says, we sucked ass during last friendly window, but we need to move on. We're going to bring the pieces together in November. I have hope. And yeah, I agree with you, Blake. I mean, I think there's going to come a time where we do move on as a fan base. I think we're getting closer and closer. And I think that World Cup excitement and that World Cup magic is going to take us over. I think we as a nation, the United States, one of the values that we have is hope. And I think we're going to see that play out. We got another caller calling in. So let's see what we got from this gentleman. Maybe it's not a gentleman. Maybe it's a lady. Hey, caller, you're on the Yank Report. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hey, David from Atlanta, Georgia.
What's up, David? What you got for us?
Hey, so yeah, going on what you're saying with the other guy, I completely agree. We definitely overrated these guys. And I feel like with the reason they weren't, getting too crazy about it is because they were hyping them up. So they were feeding into their own hype. And that's what we did so well against Mexico back about 2 years ago, when we were doing again against the Gold Cup and with the other tournament. But now I think now that, again, like these guys are young guys, and now they're getting close to the World Cup. I think it's finally starting to hit them. They're like, oh my gosh, like this is actually coming. This is happening. They're worried, they realize, oh, we don't have the experience. And back in like in the 2014 World Cup, like you're saying, a lot of our guys were veterans. We had a lot of leaders feeding off of that. But it was like, even some of our own, like our more older guys, they've never even been to World Cup. They've only been brought in the past cycle. So they're learning for the first time as well.
Yeah, and it's that depth, man. It's that next man up type thing where I think we saw in September, we thought that we had a lot of depth. We thought that we had some guys that we could rely on if some players go down. But I think we saw that we really don't, man. We're really thin, and we really need all these guys, all these top guys to be healthy and in form in order for us to look like much of anything. And that's a scary proposition right now because a lot of these guys are still out. A lot of these guys that were out in September, Musa, Robinson, Richards. I mean, they're expected to come back soon, but we don't have a lot of time. We only have 7 weeks for them to get better. I mean, Tim Weah made the bench last week, didn't get any minutes, but he needs to get up and running. We need to see the Tim Weah that put in that assist against Mexico in the World Cup. We don't have a lot of time, man. We got to get these guys up and going. And yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, because I definitely saw that against Japan too. Because like we weren't, we were trying, new players, trying to fit in such a Stan Bonds and everything like that. And I think, again, like, it kind of is a scary proposition for us because we're like, man, if we, if only 1 or 2 of these, 2 or 3 of these guys go down, these guys look uncomfortable with it. They're not used to that yet.
If they go down, if there's a yellow card accumulation, if somebody just comes into camp and they're tired, they're not 90 minutes match fit. I mean, like, do we really expect all of these guys to go 90 minutes every game? I mean, it's tough, and we're paper thin, man. I'm worried. Now, there is a silver lining. I will throw this out there for everybody. Like there is some stuff that I think we can look forward to. That maybe September wasn't such indicative of what we're going to see in the World Cup, and I think that's the tactics that we used in September were way different than what we had been seeing from the national team, and we're much different than what we saw in the summer when we played Uruguay and Morocco. I remember Greg Berhalter did a interview this summer whenever he was doing his media tour with Herculez Gomez, and Herculez Gomez asked him something like, what makes this team good? Like what is going to give England problems whenever we play them? And Greg talked about the press. He said the press is everything. The press is going to make it so difficult to play through. We're just going to be nonstop. We're going to get after people. And then we came out against Japan and we came out against Saudi Arabia and we played in a mid block. So our best asset we didn't even use. And I don't know if that was because so many of our players are not 90 minutes match fit. I don't know, because we wanted to get Gio Reyna out there, but I don't think you really want Gio Reyna pressing right now. Or if it was Greg Berhalter trying to throw off the teams scouting us for the World Cup and showing them different options, or just trying to give us different options to play with come Qatar. I don't know exactly why, but I am 1,000% sure that whenever we get to Qatar, whenever we get to the World Cup, we are pressing, we're coming out like banshees, and we're going to be running after people. That's not what we saw against Japan and Saudi Arabia. I know we're going to see that against England and Wales and Iran. And I think we're going to have hopefully better outcomes because of it. So that is a silver lining, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because that's the next thing I was going to ask, whether do you think it was nerves, why we had a bad window? Because again, it's just a bad window. Nerves, because like, hey, this is the last, warm-up games before we go to the World Cup. Or again, Greg's always been talked about in the press, like, hey, like this is the only one you're playing. These guys aren't used to other things, so he's just trying out new things. I guess maybe from pressure from the media or anything like that.
Yeah, there's that. I think there's also variance in soccer. Like you can suck pretty easily in soccer for short periods of time. I mean, the best team doesn't always win. The team that plays the best doesn't always win. The team with the best tactics, the best players, whatever, they don't always win. So it could, there's some of that as well. I mean, we look at that window. If Jesus Ferreira gets his header on frame and scores that goal, we're looking at a different window. You know, in the Saudi Arabia game, if Jesus had a really hard shot on goal, if that's a little bit to the left or to the right of that keeper, that goes in the back of the net, and we're looking at a different window. We're a little bit more excited than we are right now. So variance is something that comes into play as well. But I think the form of the players is probably the number one thing that's going to determine our success heading into the World Cup. That's absolutely everything right now. And then what tactics Greg ultimately uses is probably number two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I remember I even watching like just on YouTube, Hurt Gomez during one of the clips, he was even saying that too. He said the same thing you said, like, hey man, like he's got to get that on frame, and if he gets that on frame, these guys know what they're doing. These guys expecting these, Jesus Ferreira should finish that, and they said it was a whole different game because that was very early on in the match too.
Yeah, so it was.
Saying, hey, he just.
Yeah, that game against Japan, if Jesus puts that goal away, I mean, if you guys recall, if you want to put yourself through that, if you want to go back to that game against Japan, the first 10, 15 minutes or so, the U.S. was actually building out pretty well. The U.S. was actually moving and doing things that they wanted to do. It was after things kind of started going poorly that you really saw a lot of the players kind of crumble and kind of stop doing the things that was making them successful in the first 15 minutes. And I think Tyler Adams had a quote where he kind of spoke to that, where he said the team saw a little bit of adversity and then they started doing their own thing to try to break out of the press. And then that kind of just snowballed. And then we started seeing those really bad Weston McKennie passes. Then we started seeing Luca de la Torre just not turning to go upfield, just putting his foot on the ball and passing it backwards to center backs under pressure. And then as we pass backwards and get the balls to our center backs and our defenders, we know that our center backs are not great at handling the ball, especially under pressure. And that it became a snowball that just turned into one of the worst performances we've seen in some time. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. Hopefully it's greener pastures. Hey man, I appreciate you calling in. I gotta get you off the line, get to somebody else, man.
Okay, no problem, man. Good talking to you.
Thank you, David. Good call, man. Good call. Yeah, let's see what else we got in the comment section here. Justin says, will you make a video about your World Cup roster prediction after the friendly window? Yeah, I will absolutely do that, Justin. I've been, we have like 4 rosters now, something like that, 4 or 5. This will be the 5th one. So we'll really get to see the progression of the World Cup roster prediction from like the start of the World Cup qualifying all the way till now, which will be kind of interesting. I think a really interesting thing about that is how many players have come back into the fold. Like specifically, Josh Sargent is a player that just disappeared for a while and then came back in. So that'll be cool. I'm definitely going to do that. Let's see. Burnman says, you sound like you're describing Leggett, who Luca de la Torre was supposed to be the antidote to. And yeah, I made a point in my Japan rap video. It Japan wrap up video. It wasn't a rap. I was not rapping. But I made a point in that video about Luca de la Torre specifically and compared his game against Japan to Sebastian Leggett's game against Panama. Sebastian Leggett's game against Panama, where he got ripped to shreds and it was his last time playing for the U.S. men's national team. And there were a lot of similarities, man. A lot of the things that made us fail against Panama, where Sebastian Leggett was not looking for forward passes, was not moving forward, was not being direct, kept passing it backwards, kept just being way too slow. Luca de la Torre was doing those similar things. I'm not saying that Sebastian Leggett and Luca de la Torre are the same player. I think Luca de la Torre is a much better player, has a much higher ceiling. I think he's just not in the form he needs to be in right now. I think he can definitely get better, but for sure. I mean, recently one of the big discussions in the U.S. soccer world was Kellen Acosta's quote about how MLS players are just ripped so much harsher than the European-based players after poor performances, or really after any performances. And I think we really saw it there after that window. I mean, after that Japan game, I saw Aaron Long get ripped, and Aaron Long was getting ripped coming into that game, and he definitely got ripped after that game. And Aaron Long definitely wasn't good in that game. He was not good. But to say he was the reason why we lost, or he was the worst player on the field or the worst performer on the field, not by a long shot, man. There were a couple other guys who really deserved to get that criticism, and they just didn't get it. There's other players who were the whipping boys, and they're the whipping boys game in and game out. Let's see. Oki says, "Hey Sam, I'm a Milan fan. Might be hard to take, but Dest isn't a great option for this team in the future. Too unreliable." Oki, are you talking about AC Milan, or are you talking about the national team? I think the thing with Sergino Dest, I think one of the callers kind of mentioned this earlier, is talking about how we overrated this team and these players. A lot of these players were on a really solid trajectory like 2 years ago or a year ago. They were looking up, man. They were doing great things. It looked like everything was falling into place, and that by this time, a lot of these guys would be setting the world on fire. But a lot of these guys just didn't, man. A lot of these guys either regressed or kind of stagnated or kind of stayed right where they are. I think Sergino Dest is one of them. I mean, Sergino Dest was this player who has all the tools with the ball at his feet, has all the tools in the attack, but it just has to work on his defending, his defensive IQ, and his man-up defending. It seemed like it was getting a little bit better at Barcelona, and then it just went right off the rails. So he's kind of the same player right now that he was whenever he arrived at Barcelona. So we just didn't get that growth that we were expecting at this time. I think Tyler Adams is a similar case, where when Tyler Adams arrived at RB Leipzig, he looked like he could potentially be one of the best young defensive midfielders in the world. He was this next N'Golo Kante. He just had all these things going for him. And then he gets injured, things kind of sputter. You get new managers at RB Leipzig. He's being asked to play on the ball a little bit more. Some of these weaknesses in his game get revealed. And now he ends up at Leeds. And it's a good spot for him. He's under Jesse Marsch. I'm really enjoying watching him at Leeds. It's great and all, but he's certainly not like this Champions League defensive midfielder, one of the top clubs in the world, super reliable guy that we were hoping he could be. And I think that goes for a few players on this squad, man. I mean, Ricardo Pepi, Josh Sargent, just go down the list. Even Christian Pulisic is not quite right now where we thought he would be 2 years ago as a player who is spare parts at Chelsea and is probably going to be on the way out to probably a lesser club at this point. Let's see what else we got. Burnman says, Sam, I disagree with your analysis of Pepe's performance. He was decent, but service and setup was poor. He'll make the World Cup. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, I don't know. I feel like, considering what we saw, that I feel like you have to bring PFOC. And if you have to bring PFOC, if it's between Sargent and Pepe, then I think you have to take Sargent. That's kind of where I'm at on that. I don't know what Pepe brings that none of the other guys bring. I'll agree that he was decent, but service is going to be an issue. I mean, we saw that all the way through World Cup qualifying. And I didn't like in those moments where down the left flank against Saudi Arabia, we saw Dest and McKennie and Pulisic just dominating that left flank at the beginning of the game. We didn't really see Ricardo Pepi going over there and combining with him and overloading the way we would have saw Jesus Ferreira do it. And then we didn't see Ricardo Pepi getting to the box and being a dominant force the way we would have saw Jordan Pefok do it. He just didn't really bring a lot to the table while that attack was going on. I thought a big reason why we didn't see that attack flow from left to right very much was, I mean, part of it was Kellen Acosta, but another part of it is Ricardo Pepi. I just don't know what he brings to the squad that none of the other guys do. I think Sargent would be a better option right now. Sargent and Pefok. Oki says, Antony is a style we need to look for. Not optimal, but the style is realistic. I hate looking at Dest lose possession and not react properly. Way too relaxed about it. I think the thing about Anthony Robinson is he's just not great in possession. I think early on in the Berhalter-Robinson era, Anthony Robinson's first few starts for the national team were pretty terrible. He did not look good at all. And the reason why he didn't look so good is because Berhalter was asking him to be involved in the build-up, to make a lot of passes, to hold on to the ball. And that just didn't really work for his game. I think later on, Greg kind of shifted things where he's put Robinson way upfield, dropped either Musa or McKennie in to be involved in the build-up and kind of took that off of his shoulders. And we saw a much better Anthony Robinson because of it. If he's able to just run down that sideline and fire in crosses, then he looks great. And that's kind of exactly what you need if you're like a boomerang EPL club, which Fulham is. But if you're going to move up to that next echelon in world soccer, where you're playing with these teams that possess the ball for the majority of the match, and are looking for these super intricate passing sequences and are looking for left backs and right backs who are able to come into the midfield and join that attack. I don't think Anthony Robinson is going to be that guy. Like, he's not Trent Alexander-Arnold or Sergino Dest or Reece James or Ben Chilwell or any of these guys that are kind of that next tier of right backs. And I'm including Sergino Dest in that mix, which maybe I shouldn't, but I don't think that Anthony Robinson's ever going to have the quality on the ball that's necessary to make it to that next level of club. But I think he's fine for what he does for the U.S. men's national team, and he's the best left back that the U.S. has had, maybe ever. Maybe you put John O'Brien above him if you're one of those John O'Brien guys. But yeah, let's see. Please respond to Rico. I wholeheartedly agree. I didn't see Rico's comment, so help me out to find that. Hector Rowland says, since we have so many players playing in the Red Bull style and system, would it make sense to model the national team off that system? Hector, it's tough. It is tough to model a national team off of the Red Bull system, because the Red Bull system is an intricate pressing system that requires all 11 players on the field to know exactly what to do in every situation defensively. Because if you're pressing like that, if you're running like that, and players are missing assignments, and you're just going to get ripped to pieces. The U.S. has switched to a more Red Bull-like system where we are pressing a lot more, where we are playing more aggressive. We didn't see it in September, but prior to September, in the summer and in the World Cup qualifying, we did see that. So I think we have like a Red Bull light system, maybe like a sugar-free Red Bull system right now, but not quite on that level. And that's really the big difference between club soccer and international soccer, is you're not going to be able to put in these super intricate systems the way that we see it at club level. And that's just the reality. One of the big criticisms against Greg Berhalter that people say a lot is his trying to run the national team like it's a club team, and it just doesn't work, because you have so many players coming in and out, you have so many injuries that you almost have to reassess the playing style of the club. The playing style of the national team, and try to figure out what the national team is going to do each window whenever you see which players are available to you. We saw that in September with no Yunus Musa and just nobody who was going to progress the ball. So I think, to answer your question, we're playing a system similar to that Red Bull system, but you're never going to see something as intricate and as exacting as that Red Bull system, because you don't have enough time with the players, and you can't bring in 23 players that are exactly a fit for that system the way Red Bull can. You're always going to end up with kind of square pegs and round holes. So it's difficult to do that. Let's see what Oki says. Oki, hey Sam, do you think it would be the best direct who do you think would be the best direct striker we have in the pool right now? And how important is it that we have them in the team for the World Cup? The best direct striker for the team, and by direct, he means a player that you could just kick it up to, kick it long to, just not worry about the build-up, not worry about the midfield, just kick it long straight to that guy. And there's only one answer right now, because I think there's only a couple of guys who can even do that job. I think Jordan Pivak is the standout. Jordan Pivak is essentially doing that job for Union Berlin. If you guys have been paying attention to Union Berlin this year, they run a two-striker system. It is Pivak, and it is the other striker's name is escaping me right now. Maybe somebody can fill me in the comment section. But essentially, Union Berlin kicks it long to Jordan Pivak, and he either heads it on or holds it up and plays it to the other guy. And the other guy is in an unreal scoring form right now. He's the top scorer in the Bundesliga. He's outscoring his XG to a remarkable extent. So he is for sure that guy as far as directness. Another direct option would be Brandon Vasquez. He can kind of do a little bit of that. I think it'd be a step down from Jordan Pivak to Brandon Vasquez. Jordan Pivak is kind of an anomaly in world soccer with his ability in the air. Just absolutely incredible what he's able to do game in and game out. I think those are the two guys who I would look to for that particular role. I mean, maybe Daryl Dike would have been in that mix. We saw Daryl Dike do a lot of that stuff whenever he was in the championship, but he's just been injured for so long that he's not really in the mix for that position. Now, as far as how important is it to have that in the team for the World Cup? Considering what we've seen from this team in the last few months, I think it is pretty important, man. I think it's important in the World Cup to have a plan B and a plan C, and to be able to take, if you're chasing a goal or if things just aren't going for you right now, like Jordan Pefok is just a cheat code. Like it's always going to work. If all else fails, you can stick Jordan Pefok up top and he can win balls in the air. He can knock it down, and we can have, we can stick Christian Pulisic next to him and just run fast and behind. It is definitely it's just something that it feels like it's something that's so easy and just so there that I just don't understand why we would pass that up to have like three strikers who, while different, do sort of similar things in the system, and we don't really have anybody that can really fit that bill. So for me, I think it's really important that we take that player. It seems like Greg Berhalter disagrees, but that's where I'm at on it. Yeah, Carl Tanner says Becker. Becker is the name of the striker that is paired with Pefok over at Union Berlin. Yeah, man. MSB says, love DK, but his injury situation has been troubling. Hope he can come back stronger. Just one of the real disappointments of the cycle has been Daryl DK. I mean, such a likable guy, and a player that, I mean, he caught red hot form a few years ago, and everybody thought like this Daryl DK. I mean, what was the price tag that he was supposed to get sold for? Like $15 million. He ends up getting that big move, and just arrives at West Brom and just hasn't played soccer at all. Just really disappointing, man. Really like that guy. Really like his TikToks. Really like the energy that he brings to the team. He would have been a great player to have throughout World Cup qualifying, to kind of do similar to what Jordan Pefok does, but I think DK is a little bit faster and a little bit more dynamic and can make some of the runs in behind that we just don't see from Pefok. So that would be great, but yeah, that's where we're at right now. Let's see. I think Berman says, I think his cases to be simply on the roster are offering different style and versatility, but can't conceive a realistic World Cup match I'd start him in. Yeah, I think that's right. Is just bringing him in off the bench, which still can. I mean, how many World Cup moments does the U.S. have where games were won and lost in like the last 10 minutes of the game, which is like these miracle goals? I mean, there's been so many of them at this point that last 10 minutes, that last 20 minutes can be so important. So why not have a guy like that to bring in? It's disappointing. Chris Fairburn says, I found it kind of funny that all the big media buffs were calling for change and whatnot after the failure of the last cycle. But then after these two friendlies, they're asking, what are we doing? I mean, whenever the team's not performing up to expectations, he says we should be playing long balls, etc. That's what he means. Yeah. So what he's saying is, after the last cycle, everybody wanted a coach to come in that had a system, that had a plan, that was going to change the style of American soccer, that was going to get us playing more interesting or attractive soccer. And that's what we brought in. It's interesting whenever you kind of look at the lineage of American soccer coaches, like starting with, say, like Bob Bradley, where Bob Bradley was known as Bunker Bob, where he kind of bunkered and counterattacked. And he was effective and he won some big games. I mean, he was the coach that beat Spain. But after a few years of Bob Bradley, fans got frustrated. We wanted to see the team play more European style soccer. We want to be more progressive. So they ditch Bob Bradley and they go out and they get Jurgen Klinsmann. Jurgen Klinsmann comes in and kind of says all the right things, talks about attractive, progressive soccer, but the rumors are that he didn't have a lot of tactics at all, that oftentimes the team had no tactics and to the start of the game, like not Bob Bradley. the younger Bradley comes and Jermaine Jones would have to like figure out the tactics and try to figure out what the players were going to do. And eventually later on in the Klinsmann era, there's a lot of locker room drama. The locker room falls apart. Players are mad at each other. So we turn to the disciplinarian, Bruce Arena. He comes in and he fails. And then following all of that, the U.S. Soccer says, okay, we need someone who's going to build a culture. We need someone with a system. We need somebody who has direction. And they bring in Greg Berhalter. And now people are like, we need somebody, every time they bring in a coach, it's always like to address the failures of the previous coach. So we end up going from like one extreme to another. And it doesn't feel like we're ever like building towards something, which is frustrating. But I think the U.S. soccer has shown, especially with the news of recent weeks, that maybe they aren't the most forward-thinking crowd out there, and they are kind of just reactionary. So disappointing. I'm going to take a few more questions, and we're going to wrap this thing up because we are at getting closer to that hour mark. I appreciate everybody coming in. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the phone calls. It's a rough time in American soccer right now. It's a rough time for the fan base. I mean, I put out a tweet the other day saying it's been a week since the Saudi Arabia game. How are we feeling? And a lot of people are still just not excited, not enthused with this team, not enthused with the coach, not enthused with the way the players are playing right now. And a lot of the excitement for the World Cup has really dwindled, which is just crazy, man. I mean, we've been so excited about this team and these players and this tournament for so long. And here we are just a few weeks away, man, just 7 weeks away. And it seems like so many of us are just down and not excited about this tournament, man. It's crazy how it's played out. I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks that sort of the switch gets flipped, that a lot of us get that World Cup fever. We get excited and we're just right back to where we were before. Maybe, Pulisic, it would mean the world to us if Pulisic could to get some minutes, score some goals, and just really get some enthusiasm going with the fan base again. But that's not where we are right now. We're kind of down, and it's disappointing. It looks like the chat is talking about Jesus Ferreira right now. So let's get into that. MSB says, I don't get the Jesus lock status as well. I wonder next cycle how long he stays in that position. The interesting thing about Jesus Ferreira is he has endured a pretty long time in American striker standards. And if you look back over Jesus's tenure with the national team, and what he's been able to do in games. I know everybody will point to his lack of goals, but his contributions to goals have been really impressive. And even in the September windows, I mean, if you think about of all the strikers that we saw, the two best goal scoring opportunities that we saw were number one, Jesus's missed header against Japan, and number two, Jesus's opportunity against Saudi Arabia, where Paul Arriola played him in. They start to stack up, and you see that when this guy is in the game, scoring opportunities happen more frequently for the U.S. men's national team than when he's not in the game. And I'm right there with you. He needs to score goals. If he could score goals, it would change so much of how we're feeling about this team and our options heading into Qatar. But as of right now, we've just not seen any striker come in and generate the kind of scoring opportunities that Jesus is having for the national team right now. And until somebody comes in and displaces him, he's going to be the guy. I think a lot, if you guys watch me regularly, you know that I'm pretty high on Jesus. I think that Jesus is going to be one of these guys that's playing in Europe in a couple of years, that goes on to have a pretty solid career. I'm not saying he's going to be the next striker for Real Madrid or anything, but I think he's a player that we should be excited about. And it's disappointing that he keeps missing these chances. But his ability to create these chances, not just for himself, but for others, because of the quality that he brings, because of his soccer IQ, his off-ball running, his ability with the ball at his feet. He's making things happen from the striker position where a lot of his contemporaries are not. Benjamin Crawford says, coming from an FC Dallas fan, I love to see Jesus have success, but he has zero physicality to his skill set. I think That's what I think differentiates Pepe from him. Yeah, the physicality thing is definitely an issue. I don't think that you necessarily have to be physical to be successful as a striker. I mean, there's many examples of players who have been good that aren't necessarily the most physically dominant players. I mean, like Landon Donovan, gosh, I just had a few of them come to my mind and then they escaped. I mean, Lionel Messi is not a very big player and he's had a pretty solid career. I think what you'll find with a lot of these guys who aren't like the most physically intimidating players that go on to have successful careers is that they find like a balance and they find a way to kind of have like a strong center of gravity. Jesus is not quite that yet. I don't think we see him get pushed around quite as much as we see like Brendan Aronson or Christian Pulisic for that matter. But it would be something that if he can add that to his game, it would complement an already pretty impressive skill set. But I think the main thing Jesus has to do is just score the damn goals. Because I mean, we can talk about him not being very physical. We can talk about this, that, the other. The reality is he keeps putting himself in these positions against these quality opponents where he can score goals. I mean, he did it against Uruguay. He actually scored a goal against Panama. He did it against Japan. He did it against Saudi Arabia. He's in the positions. He's creating the opportunities. It's just about putting it in the back of the net. So we've seen him do it regularly for FC Dallas. If he can do it for the national team, we would be in a lot better boat than we are right now. That's what we're really missing, guys. We're missing these players that can just score a goal. We're putting a lot on the system and like creating goal scoring opportunities. If you watch a lot of top level soccer, I mean, so many goals just come from having a guy that just scores a goal out of nowhere. I mean, that was Clint Dempsey. I mean, the Jurgen Klinsmann years, if you remember the Jurgen Klinsmann years, so much of it was we just didn't create scoring opportunities, but somehow, some way against the run of play, Clint Dempsey would just score a goal. And it just kept us going. It helped us qualify. It helped us keep going in the World Cup. That's what we need. Let's see. Oki says, I got too focused on the press. That leads press makes me okay, man. He loves that type of soccer. That type of soccer does things to him. Jackson Cook says, I don't want an MLS striker leading the line against the best center backs in the world. I think you're going to get one, man, because I don't think that the other striker options have outplayed him. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Oki says, who is the next Clint Dempsey type clutch player? I don't know. The thing about Clint Dempsey is he started his career at Fulham whenever he was 23, 24 years old, something like that. That would put him as older than most of the players on our team, and that's how old he was whenever he actually got over to Fulham. So that's kind of where we are. I think a lot of Clint Dempsey's clutchness and a lot of his ruggedness and a lot of like his goal scoring came later on in his career. If you look at his international career, he went unconscious whenever he was like 26 years old and on. We don't have any players like that at the moment. So maybe there's like a second half to Christian Pulisic's career where he's absolutely unconscious. Maybe it's Matthew Hoppe. Maybe it's Daryl DK. Maybe it's Josh Sargent. I mean, a number of these guys can go on to have really successful careers. They're kind of right on the cusp of like the age where things really change for players. I remember I did a video not too long ago on Josh Sargent and his struggles at Norwich. And I compared him to Raul Jimenez, the great Mexican striker, and kind of where Jimenez was at in his career at the same time as Josh Sargent. If you look at Jimenez's career, I mean, his success came much later on. His goal scoring record was kind of similar to Josh Sargent's at the time. And that's what you'll see with a lot of strikers outside of like the Erling Haalands and like the Nunez's and like the top guys. A lot of the strikers don't really hit their peak until later on in their careers. And that could still happen for a lot of these guys. So maybe there is a Clint Dempsey in this bunch. He just hasn't gotten old enough yet to really get there. Let's see. Jackson Cook says, I wonder why he's outplayed them. Can't have anything to do with them being in difficult leagues. Put Jesus in Pifoc's shoes. Does he score those goals? No. Well, Jesus and Pifoc are extremely different players. I think that Jesus could be successful in Germany. I think he could be successful in a lot of different leagues. I don't think that Jesus is can only score goals in MLS or anything like that. I mean, Jesus is a pretty phenomenal player with the ball at his feet. I wonder if Jesus's position whenever he gets to Europe is going to be striker. I don't know. The interesting thing about Jesus Ferreira is that this season is the first season where he's played full-time striker. That's kind of a part of Jesus' story that like nobody credits him for. I mean, last season he was playing as a second striker. He was playing as a winger. He's converted to striker this year. So I think a lot of that non-traditional striker, a lot of that false nine kind of stuff that we talk about with Jesus is him like literally learning the position. So if he's able to do what he's done at FC Dallas at 21 years old, playing striker for the first time in his career, scoring 18 goals, tying the club record for goals, becoming one of the top attacking players in the league. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I feel like he can carry a lot of that to Europe and be successful. As far as doing what PFOC's doing right now, I don't think PFOC's going to continue to do this. I mean, that team is scoring at such an incredible rate right now. They're scoring so much further than their XG that I don't think they're going to be able to keep that up. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, they've proven us wrong to this point, so maybe they'll continue to do so. I do think that PFOC needs to be in Qatar. I'll be disappointed if he's not. So I think that's where we're going to end it, man. I really appreciate you guys coming through. I feel like these videos are often like a therapy session for myself and for you guys as well. It's only 7 weeks away to the World Cup. It's coming up, man. It's coming up, and it's going to be here whether we like it or not. So we might as well get excited. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking. I'm going to be trying to do these live videos once a week heading up to the World Cup. So I look forward to that. Chris Gary comes in right at the death. I'm sorry, man. We're wrapping it up. It's been an hour. I appreciate you for coming out. If you really want to support the channel, you become a member. We actually heard from one of the members tonight who called in. There are a few different options in the member section that directly supports me. So shout out to all the tier 2 members. Guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report.